Hello, everybody. This is the Bosque Mobile Bicycle Repair Podcast. This is part 2 of episode 1. What type of bicycle you should buy? I'm going to talk about shifting, more about bike fit, transporting your bicycle, bicycle materials, and do not get about not getting suckered into buying tubeless tires on this episode. So sit back, relax, and learn from me, Frankie, owner of Bosque Mobile Bicycle Repair. I want to talk about get back about the bike fit. If some of you can't really find somebody to do a bike fit for a reasonable price, or maybe you can't afford a bike fit, you can educate yourself enough to give yourself a decent bike fit. There's material out there. I don't know about books. I don't know. I haven't seen too many bicycle repair books talk about fit. Maybe lightly going over it. There is a good video on YouTube by a YouTuber with a channel called Oz Cycle. That is the letter O, then Z, and then the word cycle. Oz Cycle. He has a video about bike fit. I highly recommend you watch it. It's really good. That's a pretty good video. He even has instructions on how to make a bike fit tool that may be a little overkill to make a bike fit tool if you're just starting out. But I mean, a bike fit is very important. So if you have the time, I recommend you make it. But yeah, you can educate yourself enough to be able to buy a bike that will fit you or can fit you better with the modification. Because even though you buy a bicycle, it's not going to fit you perfectly. You still have to do some slight modifications. I mean, there's possibility it might fit you just perfect. But sometimes you just need a little bit of tailoring to get a perfect, a little perfect fit, and that usually involves buying stems, different size stems. That stems clamp onto your steer tube. Well, your steer tube's connected to your fork. You can't replace your steer tube, but you can replace the stems that control the length of how far away the handlebars are away from you. You can adjust the saddle. It has rails. Your seat has rails on it, and you can slide it back and forth. Your crank arms, you can. There's not a lot of variation when it comes to the crank arms. You got like a 160, 165, 170, 175. So there's not too much variations with that. If your seat post, if you have to raise it too high, there's little dashes on the seat post. If you see those dashes, that means you raised your seat post too high. So, and then if you put your seat post down all the way, that means the bike is too tall for you. So bike fit is it's something you can teach yourself about. It's because there might not be a shop that can do a good bike fit in your area, or just a general bike fit. I certainly would, recommend you educate yourself before you go and trust a bike shop to do that for you. Yeah. Another thing, I think that's all I have to talk about a bike fit. Okay, the second most important thing I'm going to talk about, and it happens a lot. I see this all the time. A lot of people like gears. You live in a hilly place or maybe you live in a flat place. It just depends. Some people want a lot of gears. There's something called gear ratio, and the more gears you have, the more cogs, chain rings, the more range or different settings of to get different gear ratios you can have. Anyways, shifting is a lot more is complicated to people. To me, of course, I'm an expert, so it's not complicated to me. But it is extremely difficult to learn for most cyclists. It's difficult to grasp that concept unless you have been riding for a long time and you kind of, even experienced riders don't even know how to really shift properly, Well, so-called people that claim they're experienced. But, people have come to me and said, I got shifting issues, and, my shifting is not working. And I've shifted through the bicycle. I'm like, no, it's working pretty good. And sometimes they've taken it to a shop, I've in shop and they've repaired the shifting correctly. It's just that the customer's not shifting the right way, doing the right procedures. So learning how to shift is extremely important. I don't recommend, if you're a beginner cyclist, if you're a recreational cyclist, it's to the point where I don't even want to recommend people get a bunch of gears, like the traditional gears, a bunch of cogs, a bunch of chain rings. I recommend you get an internally geared hub or a one-by system. Now you're probably like, what's a one-by system? A one-by system is a bicycle that is designed to have one chain ring in the front. So it's like one of them cogs in the front, one of them big old cogs. I'm using inexperienced lingo here, so I know there's probably gonna be somebody experienced on here who's gonna be like, it's not a cog, it's a chain ring. Okay, I know what it's called. And so you got one chain ring in the front, and then you got multiple cogs in the back, in the rear wheel. So get one of those bikes, and or a one with a rear hub. And so there's hubs out there, rear hubs that have gears in the inside, and you can shift to a higher or lower gear without pedaling. It's low maintenance. You don't have to worry about shifting issues. If you drop your bicycle, you don't have to worry about damaging your rear derailleur. So that's what I recommend for a lot of people. Like I said, people just don't know how to shift. I have a video on my YouTube channel on how to shift a bicycle properly. I can't really teach you how to do that on a podcast. You have to visually see how to shift properly. When you're in the high gear, the biggest chain ring, let's just say you have 3 chain rings in the front. I'll try to describe it briefly. You have 3 chain rings in the front, and then you got maybe 8 gears in the back. If you're on that biggest chain ring, only use the first 2 gears or 3 gears. 3 gears. I recommend only using maybe the first 2. So the first 2 chain rings, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. Okay, so if you're on the biggest chain ring, you got 8 gears in the back. Use the 2 smallest, the first ones, the outer ones, the smallest cogs in the rear. Then if you're in the middle chain ring, you can use, I don't know, let's see. So in the middle chain ring, you can use the middle cogs. So what is it called? So if it's an 8-speed, use the 3rd, 4th, and 5th cog in the back. So that's like the middle ones, And then if you're in the smallest chain ring in the front, use the 2 biggest cogs, the last 2 biggest cogs in the rear. So that's like 1 and 2 gear or whatever. So you gotta know how to shift. If you're shifting improperly, which I've seen a lot, someone's in the biggest chainring in the front and then the biggest cog in the back, it's gonna bend that chain. It's gonna prematurely wear it, and it's gonna fatigue it so much to where it's eventually gonna break. And I've seen them break. Um, 8-speed chains are pretty tough, and I've seen them break because somebody was in that specific gear ratio, the big chain ring in the front and the big cog in the rear. Some people their shifting's not even adjusted properly, or it's out, and they can only like shift in the rear. So that's a reason why they're in a wrong gear ratio, is because their shifting's not adjusted. But it takes some time to learn how to shift properly without looking at the numbers on the shifters. That's why sometimes I get confused about the whole numbers thing in the rear cogs, because I don't even look. I can feel it, and I know where that chain's supposed to be. Some people are like, I'm in number 6, and I'm just like, just look at it. Look at the gears. You're supposed to be in there. So it takes a while to learn how to shift properly without even looking at your gears. You could do it by feel. You know where you're at. Me, I only look at maybe the chain rings if I'm shifting. I'm like, okay, what chain ring am I in? That's the only thing I look at. I don't look at the rear cogs while I'm riding. I know where I'm at. So it takes a while. A lot of people don't know how to shift properly, even though they got expensive bikes. They've been riding for a couple years. It's to the point where I don't know why they sell multiple gears on a recreational bicycle. I think rear hubs with internal gears should be a lot more popular and should be sold a lot more, because the average consumer doesn't know how to shift properly. Now, a lot of people, when they see the more gears, the more cogs, physically, they think, oh wow, it's a faster bike. It's a more it's a better bike. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a better bike. So shifting is one of the biggest incorrect shifting is one of the biggest issues I see in beginner cyclists not knowing how to shift. I remember there was a guy on YouTube. There's been a lot of good videos on YouTube on how to shift properly. I have one, so check it out. Go check it out. I try to explain it slow and in detail. It's not the greatest quality video, but at least it's a good video to teach you. I try not to waste time teaching customers on how to shift properly. I try to tell them to go to my YouTube channel. Nobody watches the video. There's some people that watch it, but most people don't. They think I'm trying to hustle them. A lot of times, some people think I'm trying to I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm like, I know how to adjust a bike properly. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of good videos out there on how to shift properly. I think Oz Cycle has one. His YouTube channel is pretty good. Yeah, he has a good chat. He has a good video about shifting. There was a guy who made a YouTube video. He's very well respected. I'm not gonna say his name or his YouTube channel, but he was saying that that's not true. You can be in an improper gear ratio, and it's not gonna hurt the bike or damage it. And I totally disagreed with that. I think he even stated in the video that it's only for temporary use. You can do that, and it won't damage your chain right away or instantly if you're in the wrong gear ratio, but it will eventually. If you keep doing it over time, it'll mess up your chain and your gears and wear them down. So I didn't like that video. So be careful what you see on YouTube. There is some things that are incorrect. Of course, it's YouTube. Anybody can post on there. Another thing, beginner cyclists are people who are just buying a bike, they don't take into consideration is transporting your bicycle. Transporting your bicycle. Now, some of you live near a bike path or bike trail, or you're only going to ride in your neighborhood. That's really good. That's great. But if you want to transport your bike, think about how you're going to do it. Are you going to throw it in the back of your truck? Are you going to take off the wheels and then throw it in your car? Do you know how to properly put on the bike wheels when you after you take them off? Do you have a bike rack on your car? Now that's a whole nother expense. That's a whole nother subject. I'll tell you the truth, I'm not even knowledgeable on bike racks. I take apart my bike and put it in the car, but a lot of times I'll just ride to the trail. I know how to put my bike together easily. Okay, I'm gonna talk about three of those issues, about three of those things. Okay, so the first one is if you take your wheels off, and I see this a lot, is people don't know how to put them back on properly. And then when they do put them back on, if it's the rear wheel, if you don't put it on properly, you're going to have shifting issues and you may have brake issues. If it's the front wheel, if you put it in properly, you're just going to have a brake issue. You got to make sure that wheel's installed straight. And, if it's a quick release, you got to make sure that quick release is tight enough. I hate quick releases. By the way, that's another subject that I got to talk about briefly. If you got quick releases, I recommend you get rid of them ASAP. And you buy these, Delta makes them. Delta's a brand. They make them. And then who also makes another one? They're basically like skewers. They replace the quick release, and you can use an Allen key to tighten them up. Quick releases are one of the biggest things, the worst things they could have put on bikes because nobody knows how to use them properly. I don't have a video about that. But go online. Your bicycle should come with an instructional manual if it's new on how to properly tighten a quick release. But those things it's probably a reason why a lot of cyclists get hurt. But learn how to put your wheel back on. But I would say if you have to, take off the front wheel, but I recommend not taking off the rear wheel unless you really know what you're doing. If you're going to take off your rear wheel, you got to shift to the lowest gear or the highest gear in the rear, which is the smallest cog. If you have rim brakes, you got to release your rim brakes and then take out the wheel. So, and then if you don't have a bicycle, like one of them folding repair stands, you're gonna have to be on the ground putting your wheel back on. So I see a lot of people, they'll come up to me, I got shifting and brake issues, or I got brake issues, and I'm like, well, they're on the trail, and I'm like, how did you bring your bike on the trail? Sometimes I'll remember, and I'll be like, well, how did you get your bike here? Did you ride here? Did you drive here? He goes, I drove here. I took my wheel off and I put it back on. Now I have brake issues and shifting issues, and I'll just grab the wheel, put it in correctly, and boom, I pretty much fixed it. If the shifting and brakes were adjusted properly, that's about it. I remember a guy told me my front brakes all messed up because he took his front wheel off to get in the car. All I did was adjust the wheel, boom, it was good again. I made some money, fast money there. And then if you have a truck, let's talk about the truck. I hear this all the time. Now you see a lot of people with those blankets, those mountain bike brand pads on the tailgate, like Fox or something. A lot of people just put those on their little tailgate just to look cool. They don't even ride. Because you can tell they're not even messed up or anything. But I've heard this so many times. Is somebody will they'll put their bike like over the tailgate or the little door, and they'll be driving on the freeway, and all of a sudden their bike flies out of the truck because they hit a bump, and that bike falls on the freeway. Gets all bashed up. I've heard that story a lot. So if you put it in a truck, tie it down. So you don't probably have to tie it down excessively with some cinch straps, but tie it. Make sure it's if you hit a bump, it's not gonna go flying out of your truck and probably hurt somebody else and hurt the bike. So that I hear a lot of. Be careful when you're with the truck. Okay, on to the bicycle racks, the ones that attach to your car. Like I said, I'm not really knowledgeable about those. Certain brands can be really expensive, but they're very good quality. I'm trying to think of that. Thule, Thule. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Those are very, very nice, very expensive. You know, I guess I'd say buy a reputable brand, something not too cheap. Um, the more heavier your bike is, probably the more robust and durable you want to get. Um, yeah, just be careful because it's going on your car. Think about what kind of car you have. Do they even make racks for your car? I seen these pretty cool bike racks. They're like suction cups, and they're some people their cars like this weird funky design, or maybe it's a little sports car, and these suction cups will attach to your car and you can put a bike on it. It's pretty cool. I've seen them use them on like really expensive cars. I think I even seen it on like a Ferrari or like Lamborghini or some weird car, some expensive car. But yeah, bike racks. I mean, if you got a beach cruiser with them giant, big old monkey bars, and it's extremely long and funky, it's gonna be hard to train. You're probably not gonna find a bike rack for that. So if you got this weird, odd giant bike, it's gonna be difficult to transport. That's why a lot of my customers are when the e-bike boom happened, I like us getting a lot of e-bikes because people were buying these things, getting them shipped to their home, and they didn't even think about, well, how am I gonna get this to the trail? How am I gonna transport this to the bike shop? It weighs like 50, 60 pounds, and the person's like 50 years old, and they can't pick it up. Isn't that so? And then if you want a rack for an e-bike, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. You got to get those ones for like motocross bikes, pretty much. So you got to think about that. A lot of people just don't think about it, They got a Toyota and they're like, oh, how the hell am I going to get this bike? But anyways, okay. We're going to talk about bike material. Most bikes are made out of chromoly steel. Like the really cheap bikes are going to be made out of high carbon steel. Think about the weight. If it's a really cheap bike, it's probably going to be made of some thick steel. I've seen them made out of like really over excessive thick steel. Like the Walmart bikes. Doesn't need to be that heavy duty of material, that thick of material thickness doesn't need to be that thick amount. It doesn't need to be that much. But most bikes are made out of chromoly. Some people call it chromo. You'll see chromoly sticker on the frame. That's light enough for most people. It's not excessively heavy. Steel is real. It lasts forever. Those bikes, I fix bikes that are older than me, probably twice my age, made out of chromoly. It's not a bad material. Aluminum is lighter. If you got an aluminum bike, uh, if you're that's a pretty good material. If you're doing some excessive riding or very technical riding, mountain bikes, I mean, it could last a long time, but it may not last forever if you get in a pretty bad accident. Uh, if you bend or dent a aluminum bike, it's good to replace it because it can crack, develop cracks. Steel, if it's a steel bike, it has a bend or a little kink. It can most likely be bent back. It's not that detrimental structurally. Steel will bend and still kind of maintain its structural integrity for cyclists. I mean, if it's a structural building and an I-beam has a dent or bend in it, then yeah, I mean, you need to probably replace that beam or fix the building. But if it's a bike, it's a whole different story. Carbon fiber. Now that we're gonna talk about carbon fiber, they say it's stronger than steel. I'm calling BS on that. It's not stronger than steel. In certain, I don't know, maybe it depends on the quality or the material thickness of that carbon fiber, but for bicycles, I don't think I've seen a bicycle that was made out of carbon fiber that was like super strong or, you know, I don't know. Just look into it. Do your research, but I'm not a big fan of carbon fiber unless you got the money to replace a frame readily and easily. If you get in a pretty bad crash. But yeah, it's over time, if it's exposed to light, it's like plastic. It'll degrade. If it cracks, it's not safe. You need to get rid of it. It's not gonna bend or it's not gonna get a dent. It cracks. And the bicycle industry is notorious for having low quality carbon fiber. The production, the manufacturing. I've actually been in a carbon fiber manufacturing facility, and they talked about briefly on the quality. You can't have any wrinkles or in the carbon fiber when you're applying it in layers. But there's YouTube channels out there where they've done quality control tests on bicycles and have seen a lot of defects. Okay, there's been a lot of videos online of them doing quality control tests, quality assurance tests, from individuals, some people with engineering backgrounds, and they've seen manufacturing defects. And the material thickness of the carbon fiber on the bicycle was not thick enough in certain critical areas. So, and if there's been distortion in press fit bottom brackets of the frame, carbon fiber frames, and you can't fix the issue like you can with a steel or aluminum bike. Another thing is with steel bikes, you can fix the threads on them. Most of the time, you can bend things. If the bike is out of alignment, you can bend it slightly and make it in alignment. So carbon fiber is a whole different thing, Yeah, if you're buying a used bike, check that bike for any cracks. You got to know how old it is. I don't know. If you're not an expert or you don't know what you're doing, don't buy a used carbon fiber bike. I don't recommend it. If you're buying a new carbon fiber bike, do your research on the manufacturer. I just don't recommend it unless you got the money and you're like, yeah, if it breaks, if it crashes and it breaks, then I could just go out and buy a new one. Like, if you got that money, hey, by all means, go buy a carbon fiber bike. But I've seen people buy carbon fiber bikes, nice expensive ones, and they're, you know, they don't have the money to replace it. They hardly have any money to get maintenance on that bike. But yeah. Anyways, that's all I'm gonna say about carbon fiber. Um, the last thing I'm gonna talk about is not getting suckered into buying tubeless tires. It got really. I mean, it's kind of died down. I haven't heard about it a lot. I haven't heard customers talk about it, tubeless tires, in a while. But during last couple of years ago, I think 2021, still going on. Bike shops were selling tubeless tires or promoting them, you know, to customers a lot, and they're not. It's not that effective in fixing puncturing. Not that effective in preventing flats. Tubeless tires are the only reasonable application that I see they can be used for. The only reasonable application for tubeless tires are by high performance mountain bike riders that need low tire pressure to improve their grip, on the trails, loose dirt. That's the only reasonable application for tubeless tires. But it's more suitable for, like I said, technical riding. You're doing some pretty dangerous stuff on a mountain bike. Even then, there's a danger of tubeless tires. If your pressure's too low or if you hit something too hard, it can kind of pop off. If they've seen racers, the wheels pop off. So I don't really. It probably is a little safer, like a little more grip on that low pressure. But I just don't. If you're not somebody who's doing that type of riding, you don't need tubeless tires. If anything, it's more expensive to get them, to set it up. It's more difficult to install correctly. It costs a lot of money, and you have to get the sealant reapplied. It's not that. There's not a lot of benefits. There's more cons when it comes to just somebody who's regular riding. There's something called Tannis Armor or foam. There's other foam inserts out there. I recommend those with the tube if you want to ride low tire pressure. And those are good enough. I mean, people have been riding mountain bikes for a long time, and before tubeless tires were around, they didn't have that many. You didn't hear about issues. You just gotta buy some knobby tires, run a low tire pressure, nothing below the recommended, and so I don't see. But I had a lady with a beach cruiser. I was fixing her bike and she had a flat, and she goes, "Oh, the bike shop was telling me." I don't know if the bike shop told her this, but she wanted tubeless tires, and I'm like, "You got a beach cruiser. You don't need tubeless tires. They're not that effective. You just need better tires." And I had told her. So I've had people come up to me about tubeless tires. I remember one time I was on the bicycle trail, and this guy had a big gash in his tire. He's like, "Oh, I got tubeless tires. If you just pump it up, the sealant will clog the hole." I'm like, "That's a big, almost like a 1-inch gash in his tire." I'm like, that sealant's not gonna clog the tire." I'm like, "What are they telling you at the bike shop, or what are you reading or watching on YouTube?" This people don't understand. You gotta have. It's only gonna clog up little holes, and you also need if that bead's off of the tire. I mean, that the bead is off the rim. You install that tire back on. You need an air compressor in order to seat that bead back on the tire. If you're out, there's been people who are out on the trail and they've gotten stuck. They couldn't fix their tire because it's a tubeless tire, and they're pretty difficult to install by hand. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, if I just get a flat, I could put a tube in it. Yeah, try putting a tube in a tubeless tire on the trail. And think about all that sealant that's in the tire. You're going to have all that sealant all over you and the bicycle. And what are you going to... Yeah, everybody carries a napkin in the kitchen sink in their backpack. You know what I mean? You're probably going to be wiping all that sealant on your clothes. And then sliding that tube in there and getting sealant on your rotors and your brake pads, and then there you go, you contaminated your rotors and your brake pads. So I just see people that are not even mountain bikers talking about tubeless tires, and then there's some people who are mountain bikers and they're like, I want tubeless tires, but they don't want them because they're gonna do some heavy riding. They just want them because they want to be cool or some social status. If that's you, hey, whatever floats your boat, you know, you can do that. But tubeless tires, they're a scam. Pretty much, I'm gonna say it, they're a scam. And Stan's no tube is the worst sealant I've seen. A lot of shops were selling that like crazy. I think a lot of times these bike shops that were selling it, they want to look prestigious. They want to sell a brand that's cool and hip. But it's not effective or it's not good quality. I'm not going to sell something if it's bad quality. Because in the long run, people are going to be like, you know what? It's been a year. This stuff has not working. The Stan's no tube is not working. This bike shop sold me garbage. And I went out and bought some better tires. And I got a tube. And I don't have a flat. So who's wrong or right? So... And then the bike shops are stopped selling it. One of the bike shops where I used to live stopped selling that tubeless tires and Stan's no tube. I called them up. I was asking for something, but they were trying to upsell me on Tannis Armor. Tannis Armor's in. It's hot. It's new. It does have its cons, but it has a lot of pros too. But like I said, I recommend better tires. Go on my YouTube channel. I got a video. It's like my highest watch video about the tires I recommend. And you can tell I'm not sponsored by these brands because I'm talking about multiple brands, different models. So if I was sponsored by one brand, they wouldn't want me to promote other brands alongside them in the same video. So that's how you know I'm not sponsored. You know. But yeah, tubeless tires is such a big scam. It's dying out right now, and I still see some people talk about it and use it, but it's pretty much gone. A lot of people found out it was just over expensive. It was extremely expensive and not effective. So yeah, tubeless tires, don't get them. Don't be a sucker. Buy some better puncture resistant tires. Get a tube. Yeah. And with the sealant, you know, like I said, Stan's is pretty bad. Slime is good. Slime is a good sealant. I don't recommend it just because I sell it. I don't even want to sell it anymore. I try to talk people out of it. Because I'm like, just spend the money. Get better tires, but sometimes they just don't want to spend the money, so I'd be like, whatever. If you want it, I'll give it to you. What customer gets, what the customer wants. So yeah, do that. Orange Seal is a pretty good sealant too. That's a pretty good one. But yeah, Sandstone 2 was like horrible, dude. Anyways. Yeah, talked about shifting, bike fit, transporting your bike. Oh, another thing about shifting. If you're going to shift, keep pedaling while you shift. You have to pedal while you shift. And depending on what gear ratio or the speed you're going, you may have to have to pedal really fast in order to shift into that gear efficiently or without breaking your shifter. So remember that. I'm going to end on that educational note. yeah, book an appointment on my website. Check out my social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter. Um, I'm on Snapchat, Odyssey, Pinterest. I'm all over the internet. So check out my channels. You want to learn some more information, educate yourself, and get out on the trail. Have fun, go riding, and I'll see you out on the trail. Have a great ride, everybody. Check out my website, www.mobilebicyclerepair.com. Have a great ride, everybody.